The sky is literally falling.
The sky is falling! The sky is falling!
So what do I mean by that? Well, look around, take a look at the markets. What's going on? Some people literally think that everything's okay. A lot of people think that there's no problem in the markets. They're just going to keep going up and they keep plowing money in the markets. Who are those people? Look around. It's your coworkers, it's your friends, your family, and more than likely your financial advisor who's telling you to keep putting your money in and not looking at any of the signs because the sky really is falling. So what we're going to do today is we're going to look at the past and we're going to look at what recently just happened. And we're going to really look at the central bank's involvement, specifically the Fed. We're going to look at how swiftly they reacted during the pandemic, how proactively they reacted, and what was the outcome. But I also want to preface this, and I want you to really hang on what I'm about to say. The Fed's actions might look like they've fixed it, but did they really just put a Band-Aid on a really big wound? You see, if you ever got a really big wound, you got a big cut, and you put a Band-Aid on it, it might seem for a second, maybe even a couple hours that it fixed the problem, but eventually the wound will not heal. You're gonna have to go and get stitches. The stitches are something the Fed has not put on. That's what we're going to cover today. This is a really important video in light of everything going on in Israel, in light of everything going on in Russia, Ukraine, in light of everything going on all around you. You can see where we're headed, but are you paying attention? My name's Chris Naugle. This is What Now? What's Next? I cannot emphasize how important it is for you to get prepared for what's about to happen. But what I'm gonna do to prove that is I'm gonna take you back in time. And I'm gonna show you how the Fed and the central banks reacted to prior situations. And then we're gonna look at how they reacted to today's situations, specifically the pandemic, which really isn't, where we're at now is just an extension of that. But there's so much else going on. And all the things that are happening have happened before, and the outcome, when you really look back at history and look at where it went and what happened, none of it's good. So are you prepared? I've been asking you this a lot, but I think this moment right here, right now, October 2023, should be the line in the sand for you to really start taking this serious. But let's go back in time to 2008. So in 2008, we had one of the closest times ever in history to a total collapse in this country. It was literally the closest we've ever been to a financial collapse. You all know this to be the Great Recession. How long did it take the Federal Reserve to act to try to fix things? Well, it actually took them about 18 months. I remember this. I was a financial advisor. I remember saying, oh my God, this bank failed. Bear Stearns went down, Lehman Brothers went down, they all went down. And how long did it take for the government and the Fed to react? 18 months. Essentially, it took them 18 months to take interest rates from 5% to 0. Did that totally fix the problem? No, there was a lot more to it, but we're just gonna compare how long it took them to go from 5% to 0 so that they could start fixing the problem. So then if we fast forward to the pandemic, how long did it take them to react to that? It was much quicker. In 2020, it took them 2 months to take rates to 0, even considering taking rates below 0. That's a lot faster, isn't it? 18 months and then 2 months, a much quicker response. So let's go one step further into that. In 2008, the S&P 500, the almighty index, the index that so many people say, oh, just put your money in the S&P, it's gonna be okay. Yeah, in 2008, it fell 60%, and it took 5.5 years to recover. That doesn't mean people got their money back in 5.5 years. It simply means it took 5.5 years for the S&P 500 to get back to where it was pre-2008. That means they had to make back 63 to 100% more. So even though the S&P 500 came back because of the drawdown effect, your accounts, your parents' accounts, did not come back in 5.5 years. It probably took almost double that for their accounts to make it back to where they were pre-2008. So when you're looking at all these other numbers, 2020's recovery of 35% loss, it took, 5-6 months to recover? Yeah, but you didn't recover from that. That's just how long it took the markets to come back to where it was. Because you lost 35%, you had to make back, because of the drawdown effect, roughly about 60%. So even though the markets came back, your accounts didn't, you still have a long way to go. Are you understanding that? But let's look at the government's reaction and what the government did to stimulate the economy to get that back. In 2008, how much did the government approve? Well, if you look at the numbers, it was a $115 billion bailout. And that happened 7 months post the Bear Stearns collapse. Just pay attention to that, right? 115 billion. I know it was 2008, but adjusted for inflation, that's still nowhere close to what I'm going to tell you next. But it took 7 months for them to do that. Now, after they did the 115, they did another $777 billion stimulus, and that package was 3 years after the crisis. So think about that. They reacted really slowly. The government did not approve those bailouts fast enough, but they didn't make that mistake twice. But in 2020, the government stimulus was far faster. Matter of fact, they approved 3 bills totaling $2.5 trillion. Hold on a second. The 2008 one was about $900 billion, give or take a buck or two. And then in 2020, how much was it? 2.5 trillion? It was actually like 5.2, but we'll just call it the 2.5 trillion that they approved right away. And they did that weeks after the pandemic started. So now when you're comparing, you can see the speed of reaction by the government and the Fed significantly helped, but did it? That's the really interesting thing that we got to think about. Did that response time really fix the problem? Or is this that Band-Aid I was talking about earlier that you put over the wound that really required stitches? I'm going to tell you, it was a Band-Aid. Now, it was a pretty powerful Band-Aid. It was like one of those really big Band-Aids you get at Rite Aid and you slap it on there and you put some of that white tape around it. Yeah, but eventually the wound will resurface. And this is going to sound bad, but it's probably going to be infected. That's right, because the wound never healed. They just put a Band-Aid over it and then a bunch of tape. The wound never got fixed. It never got stitched. It never got cleaned out the proper way. I don't mean to get your mind thinking about a nasty infected wound, but that's what we're dealing with right now, is a wound that was never really fixed. They just kept throwing Band-Aids on it, folks. All the money that they printed, all that money, sure, it made things look good, but it painted a false picture. It painted a house of cards that is going to come tumbling down. Now, there was one thing that the Fed did, is they created liquidity in the markets. In 2020, the Fed opened 13 facilities. 13 facilities in conjunction with the government, and those were all created to create liquidity for the markets. That certainly helped a lot, because when everything comes collapsing down, they needed liquidity. Banks need liquidity, people need liquidity, businesses need liquidity. So these 13 facilities is probably one of the best things they did in 2020, and one of the reasons why the markets didn't fall further and stay down longer. There's a couple other things that the Fed did that I think are worth mentioning. In 2023, there was a permanent swap lines that were set up among many major central banks, including the Bank of Canada, Bank of England, Bank of Japan, European central banks, and the Swiss National Bank. And what this was all designed to do is create liquidity and stability within the banking system. And there was also credit lines that were opened up for smaller central banks, kind of similar to what you saw happen when Silicon Valley and Republic started getting into trouble. What they did is they opened credit lines, but they did this in Australia, Brazil, South Korea, Mexico, Singapore, Sweden, Denmark, Norway, and New Zealand. What I'm trying to paint the picture of is we're not dealing with an isolated problem just here in the United States of America. We have our own problems, but it's a world economy. There are major issues going on in China right now, but there's major issues going on across the world. That's what I'm trying to help you understand, is when this thing goes down, okay? And what do I mean? Well, many of you are like, oh, when the US markets go down. No, it's going to be all markets, folks. Now, if you lived through 2008, that was kind of consolidated to the United States. Yes, it kind of bled over to some other countries, but really, that was our problem. The problems we're dealing with today and the problems we dealt with during the pandemic were worldwide problems, which is why you're seeing these central bank actions by the Fed being worldwide problems that they're trying to fix. Much harder to fix a problem that spans the entire world versus a problem that is really consolidated to the United States of America, right? So this is a big one, folks. So now let's talk about some predictions. And I don't want to just give you Chris Naugle's predictions on what now, what next. I want to give you predictions by other very credible places. But before we do that, let's predict something that I can control. I want to predict your ability to subscribe to this channel. All you have to do is click that little subscribe button. Yes, I just predicted that you would do it. But then I'm going to take it one step further. You see, there is a little bell up top. Smash that bell and you will be notified every time I put new content out. So let's start with Deutsche Bank. Okay, I just saw an article and they were talking about predictions of a recession, and they said there is a 100% chance of a recession. So, you know, not 99, not 85, not 92%, 100% chance. But let's look at some other things. The base case prediction of a crash in the next 6 to 9 months with a swift and severe reaction by the Fed is, drumroll please, 100%. That's right. So when you really look at the indicators and you're looking at all the things from the inverted yield curve to Deutsche Bank and all the other folks that would actually know, they're saying we got about 100% chance. But then on top of that, they're saying that the government is going to react swiftly and severely, just like they did during the pandemic. So what is that going to mean? Is that going to mean they're going to print another, well, I don't know, is it going to be 5 trillion? Is it going to be 10 trillion? I mean, how much more can they handle? How many more dollars can they actually print? Because what has it done this time? When they printed all that money, what did it do? It drove inflation crazy, right? And then the Fed came in and, oh, they're going to solve that problem. And what'd they do? Well, they raised interest rates. How did that feel? How you liking them apples, right? How you liking the fact that oil is going up again? You know, we got this Israel thing going on right now, and it is an absolutely sick thing that's happening. Hamas is going in and literally just slaughtering people. I don't mean to talk about bad things, but folks, like, I just want you to see what's going on here. Like, Israel is not much different than the United States. Matter of fact, it's one of the most advanced civilizations. It's not a third world country. It's not a second world country. It is a first world country. And everything that's going on over there, you might want to just pretend and just be like, oh, it's not happening here in the United States. Yes, it is. And it will bleed over here. Absolutely, positively. I'm not saying that we're going to end up in a world war, but folks, just look at what's going on. The reactions, which we do not know yet what Israel's going to do, but they will be severe. And I think what you're going to see is you're going to see who falls on whose side. It's going to be an interesting thing. A lot of countries all sit there and say they're supporting Israel, but, you know, including the United States. But correct me if I'm wrong. I hate to hit below the belt, but didn't Biden and this administration just send billions of dollars to Iran? And isn't Iran supporting Hamas? I'm just calling out what I know, and these are the facts, folks. I didn't write the checks. The Biden administration approved checks to go to Iran, and then Iran supports this. So whose side is the United States on? Well, I better hope it's Israel. But why are we supporting the enemy? I don't know. Back to the crash predictions. So we know that Deutsche Bank and many others are saying there's a 100% chance. And the signs would all point to that. But then when you look at the folks and the individuals and the advisors, well, they're saying that we're gonna reach new highs. I just read the other day that there's anticipation of reaching new all-time highs in the markets in the next 12 to 24 months. How? Please tell me how. I mean, all I see is I see families struggling in this country. I hear it and see it firsthand. People can't afford food. Gas prices are going up. It's pinching them even more. The student loans, they just kicked back on. So now people have to make an additional bill that they haven't made in 3 years. And you're going to tell me we're going to hit all-time highs? Folks, all-time highs can only be hit a number of different ways. Number one, productivity growth. We're actually growing as an economy. Like, more goods and services are being produced. More people are being hired. Companies are crushing it. Earnings are coming out good. Folks, have you been paying attention? Earning reports are going down, down, and down like the Titanic. Are people still, like, is the jobs market awesome right now? If you look at unemployment numbers, yes. But are there lots of new jobs? Are there a lot of new people just being able to go out? No, actually wages are coming down. And then you got strikes all over the place. Folks, like, I don't see how we can hit all-time highs. Actually, there is a way, and it's called manipulation. Now, could we hit all-time highs on manipulation? Yeah, I mean, look at the S&P right now. Look at the Dow Jones. Look at the NASDAQ. What dominates them? About 7 different stocks, all speculating on AI to keep the markets high. Speculating, manipulation. I don't know. Sometimes I think I'm just a negative Nelly, but you know what? All I'm doing is I'm looking at the facts, the signs, and they all point to one place. Another thing I want to hit on is, are we going to be in a deflationary period of time? Are we going to hit stagflation? Or are we just going to remain at this heightened inflationary period? Now, this is one I really don't know. I would probably, based on what I think is about to happen, I would say we're going to be stagflation or deflation. But there's a lot of people saying that we're just going to remain in this heightened inflationary period for the near future. And they're also saying that interest rates are going to remain higher for longer this time. That I'll test, because I don't think they're going to keep interest rates at these heightened levels when the whole economy slips into a recession. I truly think they're going to do the same thing they've done every other time and drop interest rates down. Remember, we talked about that earlier. So it's really anyone's game right now. So this is like a Buffalo Bills football game. In the fourth quarter, you're biting your nails, you're tearing the skin off because you just don't know what's going on. So folks, I could rant a little bit longer, but let's just talk about what you should be doing. Outside of subscribing to this channel and clicking the little bell, we already know that you are supposed to be doing that. But let's talk about some real things you need to be doing. You need to keep cash on the sidelines. You can get paid pretty decently to keep cash in money markets or high yield savings accounts. I've seen up to 5%. You need to have cash. Why? Because you're going to need to be liquid to take advantage of the opportunities coming. Another thing that's really important to talk about is all those debts. Yeah, I'm talking to you. I see the statistics. Credit card debts are at record highs. Car loans just exceeded student loans. Like, that's crazy. I know you have debts, and the debts are going to be what will sink you. So a lot of people are like, well, I don't know. I mean, I got this debt and I got that debt. Well, hey, listen, do you have money on the sidelines? Do you have money sitting there? Because here's a really smart thing to do. If you got lazy money, if you got money sitting in a home equity line of credit, you got just any money sitting on the sidelines, that money should be paying debt down. Knock your high interest rate credit card debt down, take the money you're giving to the credit cards and move that money back over to the bank account or the account that it came from. If you got a 401k, my gosh, take the money out of the 401k, and they allow up to $50,000 or 50% as a loan. Take the loan from your 401k. You'll lock in the gains that you have today if you have them, and then take the money from the loan, pay off the debt. Take the amount you were given to the debtors and put that money back into the 401k. Now you just made yourself a really nice return because you're recapturing the interest rate you were giving away. This isn't difficult stuff, folks, but maybe you just haven't thought this way. Stop putting your money into risky investments. Stop putting your money into the indexes, the S&P, the Dow Jones, the NASDAQ. Stop. Take the money that you can save and pay down your debts. That's your only hope. I'm being serious. And then what else did I recommend? Well, look into the infinite banking concepts, because that's a really great, safe, actually guaranteed place where you can put money and then use that money to pay debts down or do the stuff that you want to do. The other thing too that I think is really important for you to understand is that the fastest way to wealth is through your own debts and expenses. Do you understand that? If you're giving Visa 24 to 29%, do you realize that 24 to 29% could be the return your money's making without any risk? But yet you want to put money in the markets? You want to buy stocks? You want to put money in the indexes? Why? The return's right there. Zero risk. The other thing too you can do is you can hedge. Now this is more complicated, but you could learn about covered calls. You could learn how to use derivatives and options to hedge your bets. You could even use inverse ETFs. Although be very cautious if you don't know, like, and understand them. Please find somebody that's an expert or get to know how they work. These are just a couple suggestions, folks. But the most important thing that you must realize is this is coming. This is going to happen. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. And the when is the one thing nobody can tell you because you cannot time the markets. Folks, this is the time to prepare. We are at October 2023. I don't know how much longer you've got, but are you gonna wait and then be reactive, or are you gonna get ahead of it and be proactive? My name's Chris Naugle. This is another episode and another What Now? What's Next? Hey, if you liked this video, check this one out right here. A message from 2025. Sounds cool, right? See you on the next one.